Hello, I hope you're well. Welcome or welcome back to my channel, and welcome to today's video, which is the Accomplished Woman tag, which was created by the lovely Charlotte. Charlotte created this and was inspired by that section in Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen where the Bingleys and Mr. Darcy are listing the attributes required and expected of a woman in the Regency era in order to be considered accomplished. It is quite the list, and so basically Charlotte went through the list and created prompts for each of those attributes. I will be the first to say that I am not a huge Jane Austen fan, and I know that I am in the minority there. I hope I don't lose any subscribers for saying that. I did take a course on Jane Austen in college. I read all of her books, and yeah, it's just not my vibe. However, Pride and Prejudice is a treat, and of the books by Jane Austen, that would certainly be the one that I would revisit. So we're gonna do this tag. I kind of saved it for a rainy day for whatever reason. I felt like this would be a great tag for Women's History Month. However, I don't think all of my answers are going to be women, so there is that, but hopefully you don't mind. So why don't we dive right in? So the first prompt is music, your favorite literary musician. And this one was actually a bit difficult because I was racking my brain for musicians that have appeared in novels that I've read, and then I kind of had this light bulb moment. The Cellist of Sarajevo by Stephen Galway, the cellist of the title. I read this book last year and it feels alarmingly fitting right now considering what's going on in Ukraine, but this book is set during the Bosnian War in Sarajevo, and a shell basically strikes a bunch of people on a bread line, and the cellist's response is to play music to honor the 20 or so people that died in that incident. But he is going out into the street in war-torn Sarajevo and playing this beautiful music in honor of the lives lost. And there's just something about the juxtaposition of this war-torn city where there's actually a sniper stationed to protect him while he plays, and just the beauty and the humanity of it all that I really, really love. It's a very, very short novel as well, but as I said, it really struck a chord with me when I read it last year, and given current events, it's definitely a book that feels very timely right now. The next prompt is singing, a poetry recommendation. And again, this was a bit difficult because poetry isn't something I read on the regular. My taste in poetry tends to be quite old, so basically early 20th century and earlier than that. I'm not a huge fan of most modern poetry that is out there. Case in point, the poem that I have chosen for this prompt, which is Now is the Time by Hafez, which is a poem written, I think, during the 12th century by the Persian poet Hafez. And it's a very short poem. It's not like a collection or anything like that, but this was one of these pieces of poetry that you stumble upon at the time that you need it. And I discovered this poem in the depth of the first lockdown in 2020. It was April or May. We had all kind of gone home thinking, oh yeah, I'll see you in 2 weeks, and 2 weeks became 2, 3, 4 months, and it just kind of kept dragging. And the way that I found this poem was actually Helen Mirren, who I fangirl, recited it for some Dolce & Gabbana campaign in the middle of lockdown. And it is just absolutely breathtaking. There's something very spiritual about it, and just, like I said, it just really was the poem I needed to hear at that time. The way that it was recited by Helen Mirren, who is quite the storyteller herself with her voice and diction, it literally gave me chills the first time that I heard it and that I read it. So it is beautiful. I will put a link in the description box to her recitation of it if it's on YouTube, so you can also listen to it at your leisure. Next, we have Drawing, which is a beautiful cover, and I've talked about several beautiful covers on this channel, but the book I wanted to show today is a different one. Tried to shake things up a little bit with this stunning edition of Hans Christian Andersen Fairytales, illustrated by Sven Ottos. And this is something that I picked up when I was actually in Copenhagen, and it's just absolutely beautiful. The cover is beautiful, with the illustration that carries through the rest of the stories. The fairy tales that are in here are like Thumbelina, The Princess and the Pea, The Emperor's New Clothes. It's just this lovely collection. It is tailored towards children, but I just think it's precious, and there were several different collections of these same fairy tales, and this is just the cover that spoke to me. So this is not something you would normally see on my channel, but I love it. So there you go. Next, we have Dancing, or Dancing, if you're posh, I guess. Ignore me. It's been a week, okay? So for Dancing, a book with a lively plot, which again, I feel like I didn't anticipate this tag being as difficult for me as it actually has turned out to be. But I'm not someone who reads a lot of like plot-driven stories or anything that has like a ton of action. My cup of tea are really those like slow, character-focused stories. I love that. That is my thing. So when I think of like lively plots, I think I have to go with some of the romance books that I've read, and probably Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore is up there. This is a series set in Victorian England. It is romance, as I mentioned, but the protagonists, the women in this series, are all suffragettes in Victorian England, so they're fighting for women's right to vote, and they have their own ideas and notions about what women should be doing within society. They want more autonomy, and the books are just really, really fun romps. I call them like cotton candy reads because they're just really enjoyable. The banter between the love interests in the books can be really fun. The characters are just really vibrant to me, and because it is a romance, they tend to be very, very quick reads for me. Bringing Down the Duke, I read in one sitting. I could not put it down. So they're just a lot of fun. But as far as like lively plots and lively stories, that would be the one I would talk about and just did. Now we have Modern Languages, which is to talk about a favorite translated work. And you know, translations always have had a special place in my heart, even before I was really thinking of them as translated fiction, just because I feel like I've been reading them basically my whole life. I mean, at this point, like, Anna Karenina is definitely up there, but it's a book I talk about all the time on this channel, but that is one of my favorite books of all time, and it's translated from Russian, so it could work for here. But I do think that I would probably say, if not Anna Karenina, then The Door by Magda Szabo. And this is translated from Hungarian. It is a rich, character-driven story that really just stole my heart. I had seen the movie adaptation of it and then wanted to read the book, and the book is about this relationship between this Hungarian author and this curmudgeon of a woman that she hires kind of as a housekeeper. And it's about their relationship, and the story just starts off so interestingly with you knowing how it ends, and then it just peels back layers and teaches you more and more about the character of Emerence, the housekeeper. And it's very poetic. I felt like the translation was so smooth. And that's not always the case. Like, even with my Tolstoy books, you always have to be very selective with the translations that you pick, because some are better than others, and that is also very, very subjective. Like, the ones that I think are the best aren't necessarily the ones that someone else would, but you can have really clunky translations. I did not feel like that was the case with any of the Magda Szabo books that I've read at this point, and as I talked about in a recent video, she is one of my favorite authors of all time. Next, we're getting into the kind of more amorphous, maybe? I don't know. They're more about like someone's personality and their carriage and that sort of thing. So it's something in her air and the manner of walking, a book with strong atmosphere. If you're a regular subscriber or viewer of this channel, then you know that the queen of atmosphere to me is going to be Sarah Waters, and so I could really talk about any of the 4 books that I have read from her, but I'm gonna go with The Night Watch by Sarah Waters, which I feel like is one of the ones that I don't talk about enough on this channel. It's set during World War II, and it's following these different women over the course of several years, but the story goes backwards in time, kind of like Magda Szabo, but it is very purposefully done. So you kind of start at the end, and then you gain years, and as you're doing that, you're learning more and more about the characters, but the sense of atmosphere is incredible because you do actually feel like you've been transported to London during World War II with the Blitzkrieg and with the bomb shelters and the people living among the debris and like worried about their safety and the safety of their family. It was just incredibly striking, and what is always great to me about the Sarah Waters books is that even these books that have a more modern setting still have this way of evoking sort of the darkness and sort of the more gritty details of the story itself, and I love that. And to be honest, it's a nice way to see Gothic adapted and modernized in these books, but it's just great. I mean, I always talk about Fingersmith, which is Victorian and Gothic, but I feel like The Night Watch deserves some attention because I really, really enjoyed the setting of that book and the characters. Next is the tone of her voice, her address, and her expression, a book with beautiful writing. I'm gonna give it to Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, which is a book that I read fairly recently, in January, so it's just about March when you're seeing this video. And it's stream of consciousness, which I know is not for everyone, but Virginia Woolf is Virginia Woolf for a reason. I thoroughly enjoyed the book. It's definitely one that I feel like probably benefits from rereads because I feel like more of it and more of the skill of it will be kind of unfurled and revealed to you. But there's just something about the way Virginia Woolf describes the internal lives of these characters going about their day, in just one day. It feels, in some way, like it is paying homage to London of that time period too, which is also just extraordinarily breathtaking. As I said, this is a book that I definitely want to revisit, but I also want to explore other Virginia Woolf titles that are out there, because this was my first Virginia Woolf, and I know that she has a lot to offer. But yeah, there's something there. It's definitely in the way that she evokes the emotions that her characters are experiencing and lets you really get inside their head. And the next one is Improvement of Her Mind by Extensive Reading, which is your next read. So I just literally posted my March TBR, and so there are 12 books that I'm trying to get to in the month of March. But I think the book that I'm probably picking up next, because I am so excited about it, is probably Gentleman Jack by Angela Steidle, which is a biography on Anne Lister, who was this landholder in the Regency era in England, and also had a lot of female lovers. And it just sounds like it's going to be really, really fascinating. It's a book that I got in my big birthday Christmas book haul, so I haven't had it all that long, but I am very, very eager to get to it. And then the last question is, would you be considered accomplished by Caroline Bingley and Mr. Darcy's standards? And no. Definitely not. These are pretty high standards that you have to meet, and kind of like what Charlotte said in her own video, I do like to, I like having rules or expectations for oneself. So if I lived in the Regency era, I probably would have been doing everything within my power to make sure I could be considered accomplished. But since these standards are not the standards that we hold women by today, thank the Lord, yeah, no, definitely not. The one thing that I think I could say confidently is the improvement of my mind, because obviously I'm a big reader, I'm a booktuber, but I have always enjoyed reading both fiction and nonfiction. I am incredibly curious about just about everything, so that has served me well. I love learning, but really that's the only one on this list that I could say with any sort of certainty. So yeah, that is the accomplished woman tag, which was a lot harder. A lot more difficult than I anticipated, but now's the time that I would tag people. I'll put your tags in the description box because I didn't check ahead of time to see who's already done this, but please, if you're interested in doing this tag and I haven't tagged you, go for it. Say that I did anyway. But I do hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe, because that means the world to me and it helps this little channel grow. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!